This episode is brought to you by Fox One. Watch all 104 matches of the FIFA World Cup live in 4K for just $19.99 a month with 3 days free. Build your own multi-view, choose up to 3 streams, and follow player spotlights. Stay on top of every moment with live stats, highlights, and instant replays. The FIFA World Cup, streaming live on Fox One. Offers are subject to change. See fox.com for complete terms and conditions.
Are you one of those media strategy people clicking through slides, scrolling spreadsheets? Yes? Good. This is for you. Because on Spotify, there's an audience that's different, locked in, loyal, invested. They're called fans. Fans don't just listen to music, they feel seen by it, like it belongs to them. So when your brand shows up on Spotify, that's who you're talking to. And you're right next to artists like me, Lizzo. So, are you ready to talk to fans? Spotify advertising. You're among fans.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And you're now jumping headfirst into the Stone Zone. This just in, a federal judge in Washington, D.C. has now done what the political class, the bureaucratic permanent government, and the Biden damage control machine hoped would never actually happen. U.S. District Judge Dabney Friedrich has denied former President Joe Biden's effort to block the Department of Justice from releasing redacted audio recordings and transcripts of Joe Biden's interviews with his ghostwriter, Mark Zwanitzer. These are the very interviews that were relied upon by the Special Counsel Robert Hur in his investigation of Joe Biden's mishandling of classified documents. You'll recall that the Biden Justice Department charged former President Donald Trump with mishandling federal documents, when in fact the Presidential Documents Act allow a former president to retain and declassify any document that he wishes. Joe Biden, who retained documents from his period as a U.S. Senator and Vice President, as well as during the time prior to the time of his becoming president, in violation of law, was not charged. So this ruling today is significant. This is not merely a procedural ruling in a random Freedom of Information Act case. It's a major victory for transparency, accountability, and the basic principle that the American people have a right to know who was actually capable of exercising the powers of the presidency. You'll recall that when it was learned that President Richard Nixon had taped his various conversations in the Oval Office, Nixon went to court to try to block the release of those tapes, and the U.S. Supreme Court ruled against him 9-0. Yet Joe Biden here was making essentially the same argument, and he lost. So much for the two-tier justice system in this case. This case, brought by the Heritage Foundation, and specifically Mike Howell, who's appeared here in the Stone Zone, sought records from Special Counsel Robert Hur's investigation, including these very materials that Hur had specifically cited in his report. Robert Hur was appointed in January of 2023 by Attorney General Merrick Garland to investigate classified documents that were discovered at the Penn Biden Center, as well as Joe Biden's Wilmington, Delaware residence. Special Counsel Hur ultimately declined to prosecute Biden, in direct contrast to the decision made by the Biden Justice Department to prosecute Donald Trump, in part because he believed it would be difficult to convince a jury that an elderly former president with evident memory problems had the necessary criminal intent. So I ask you, if he wasn't cognizant enough to be held responsible for this violation of law, how is he cognizant enough to be president of the United States? In this report, Hur described Biden's recorded conversations with his ghostwriter as painfully slow, with Biden struggling to remember events and straining to read and relay entries from his own notebooks. That finding was explosive when it first became public because it punctured the very carefully constructed fiction that Biden's decline was merely some right-wing talking point, as if we couldn't see it with our own eyes. The American people were told for years that Biden was vigorous, he was alert, he was engaged, sharp as a tack, is what I believe Vice President Kamala Harris said, and fully in command. The American people were told not to believe their own eyes when he wandered, mumbled, forgot names, appeared confused, needed constant stage management to complete the simplest public appearances. Now the courts are moving us closer to the underlying evidence that may show when the decline was evident and what those around him knew. Biden intervened in this Freedom of Information lawsuit and sought a preliminary injunction to stop the release. His lawyers argued privacy, grief, and process, weak arguments. They insisted these recordings involved deeply personal conversations connected to the writing of his book, Promise Me, Dad, A Year of Hope, Hardship, and Purpose. Well, Richard Nixon argued that his recordings were deeply personal as well. The Supreme Court ruled against him. Biden's memoir about the death of his son, Beau Biden, who was the Attorney General of the state of Delaware, and his decision not to run for president in 2016. No decent person mocks grief, obviously. No fair-minded person denies that any father's anguish over the loss of his son is profoundly human. But at the time, Biden accused her of raising the question of his late son, yet we now know that from these recordings that it was the other way around. It was Joe Biden who first raised that question. These recordings were not merely private family reminiscences. They became evidence in the Special Counsel's investigation involving classified documents, prosecutorial discretion, and the mental state of a man who later occupied the most powerful office on earth. Judge Friedrich's opinion makes that distinction with clarity. The court found that the Department of Justice had made substantial redactions to protect sensitive personal information, including family matters, health issues, illness, death, and reference to non-public persons. What remained, according to the court, largely concerned matters such as foreign policy and subjects already discussed in public through the Her report, which has been made public, as well as congressional testimony or Biden's own memoir. So in other words, this was not a judicial order to parade private family grief before the public. It was a rejection of Biden's attempt to use privacy as a blanket shield against public scrutiny of his government record and an examination of his fitness to serve as president. The ruling is especially important because the court recognized the extraordinary public interest that was at stake. It's the same argument that was used in the Nixon case. Her's investigation involved a sitting president, classified documents, a special counsel who was vilified as a Republican, that was false, who reported to the Attorney General, and an Attorney General who served under the very president whose conduct was being examined. That structure alone creates an obvious need for transparency. The public has a right to know whether Mr. Her pulled his punches or acted properly. The public also has a right to assess the evidence. Robert Her relied upon when he declined to prosecute Biden while describing serious concerns about Biden's memory and mental faculties. That, of course, only became apparent after Joe had been forced out of the race by Barack Obama. The Biden team argued that the Justice Department's reversal was arbitrary, capricious, and politically motivated. The federal judge did not buy it. The court held that the department's decision was adequately explained and that Biden was unlikely to succeed on the merits. The court acknowledged that once private material is released, the harm cannot be undone, but found that Biden's privacy showing could not overcome the weak merits of his legal claim. More importantly, the court concluded that the balance of equities and the public interest favored full disclosure. This is precisely how the Freedom of Information Act is supposed to work. The Freedom of Information Act was not enacted to protect and comfort powerful men. It was enacted to pierce the curtain of government secrecy so citizens can understand what their government has done in their name. A republic cannot survive when official truth is manufactured by press secretaries, curated by bureaucrats, and enforced by the compliant and duplicitous mainstream media. Records matter, evidence matters, audio matters because tone, hesitation, confusion, pace, and comprehension cannot always be captured on a cold written transcript. That's why these tapes matter more than the Biden camp wants to admit. A transcript cannot be sanitized by formatting. A summary cannot be massaged by lawyers. A press statement cannot be spun by consultants. But a tape has a brutal honesty of its own. It carries the pauses, the stumbling, the uncertainty, the strain, and the cadence of a man in real time. If Robert Her relied on the way Biden sounded, then the American people are entitled to hear enough of that evidence to judge whether the special counsel's conclusions not to prosecute Biden were fair, accurate, and complete. I say kudos to the Oversight Project and to my friend Mike Howell. He deserves great credit for pursuing this fight when the unusual gardens of democracy were strangely uninterested in guarding anything except the Biden fake narrative. Where was the New York Times, the Washington Post, and the others? So it is a huge victory here for the American people. Also one of consistency. This is not just a conservative victory, it's a victory for America. The documents belong to the people because the government belongs to the people. The presidency is not a family business, not a private trust, not a retirement home for party elders, and not an institution to be operated behind velvet ropes by aides wielding an auto pen. The auto pen issue now looms over this entire scandal like a dark cloud over the Potomac. If Biden's decline was visible years before he entered the White House, then the American people must know who exercised power when he could not. They must know who made the decisions, who signed documents, who approved policy, who controlled access, and who used the machinery of the executive branch while hiding behind the image of a president who may not have been fully capable of performing the office. And this will become particularly relevant in view of our upcoming story. That is that Tulsi Gabbard, the outgoing Director of National Intelligence, has released new documents that shed light on the actions of Dr. Anthony Fauci. Now, this is significant because Fauci has received an auto pen generated pardon against any crime he may have committed. That will become extremely relevant in our upcoming story. The defenders of Biden will say that this decision by the courts is cruel. They will say that it was indecent to examine the frailties of an aging man. That argument might carry weight if Biden had been a private citizen, but it collapses when applied to a president of the United States. No man has the right to occupy the Oval Office while concealing incapacity from the voters. No party has a right to install a figurehead while unelected handlers govern from the shadows. Compassion for age and illness must be overcome. It cannot be used as an excuse for deception at the highest levels of government. I'm Roger Stone. You're tuned into the Stone Zone, and we'll be right back.
Mommy.
A Lego Duplo set is a gift that always clicks. And clicks. And clicks. For all the kids who love to stack and play, choose a Lego Duplo set. A gift that always clicks.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
You know, yesterday at about 4 o'clock p.m., I was in the old executive office building, which is next to the West Wing, and I ran into the outgoing Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and she told me she was pushing very hard as her final act to release and declassify these stunning documents. Now, newly declassified documents released by Tulsi Gabbard are shining additional light on the actions of Dr. Anthony Fauci, the intelligence community, and how the COVID-19 pandemic was inflicted on an unsuspecting American public. In a video statement, Gabbard accused Fauci of lying, spreading misinformation, and helping suppress evidence that the virus likely leaked from the Wuhan Institute of Virology in China. She said Fauci's agency helped send U.S. taxpayer dollars to risky gain of function, these are weaponization research in Wuhan, then worked with corrupt intelligence officials to bury the lab leak theory and destroy those who challenged the official narrative. According to Gabbard, the documents include hundreds of emails showing that intelligence assessments were often incorporated in Fauci's recommendations. Tulsi Gabbard also alleges that Fauci lied under oath in 2024 when he denied involvement in discussions with intelligence officials about the viral research. The release also points to whistleblowers who say they faced retaliation, career damage, and threats after raising concerns about the manipulation of intelligence surrounding COVID's origins. One, Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory report that reportedly found the necessary conditions for an accidental release for a lab-modified coronavirus existed at the Wuhan lab in 2019. This confirms what many Americans have known for years, that during the COVID pandemic, powerful officials shut down debate, censored dissent, and protected themselves while the American people paid a horrific price. Millions of people died, as well as needlessly were endangered, needlessly because of the gross incompetence and the megalomania of the modern American Mengele, Dr. Fauci. His desire to play God turned deadly for the entire world. Now, in my opinion, he must be charged. That would lead immediately to a full airing of the legality and the validity of the so-called auto-pen pardons. So in this case, Dr. Anthony Fauci has gotten a preemptive pardon from Joe Biden on his way out the door, but Joe Biden didn't sign that pardon. It was signed by an auto-pen. Does Joe Biden even know that that pardon was given, or did he authorize it? Well, a court case would raise that question. So I guess my argument here is that Fauci should be charged based on all this information put forward by Tulsi Gabbard, also by Senator Rand Paul, who has said consistently that Fauci lied in front of his committee hearing, and we can test the validity. In the meantime, however, Tulsi Gabbard once again standing tall. Before she leaves the office of the Director of National Intelligence, she declassified all of the documents proving that the Russian collusion claims were a hoax, a seditious conspiracy run and directed by Barack Obama himself. She released documents proving that the impeachment of Donald Trump was yet another fabricated fraud. She terminated the classified security clearance for 37 officials, 37 of the 51 intelligence officials who claimed that Hunter Biden's laptop was Russian disinformation. We now know that at least 17% of the American people said that they had known that Hunter Biden's laptop was real, they would have voted very differently than they did in 2020. So Tulsi Gabbard leaves as an American hero. She's a good friend of mine. But don't think that she's done, folks. She's not done at all. She'll be back because I believe her greatest days of public service lie ahead. Here she has done one last extraordinary act of public service, and that is exposing that Dr. Anthony Fauci is a mass murderer, a modern-day Mengele, and he should be held responsible. I'm Roger Stone. Listen to the Stone Zone, and we'll be right back.
This episode is brought to you by Starbucks.
That is fire. Whoa, that's good.
This might be the drink of the summer.
Okay, I like this one too. I'm rocking with it, okay.
Try it for yourself. Starbucks Refreshers Concentrates are coming home. Find them in the coffee aisle and make it yours.
Suffering from dry, tired, irritated eyes? Don't let dry eyes win. Use Systane Pro. It hydrates, restores, and protects dry eyes for up to 12 hours. Systane Pro. Triple action dry eye relief.
The Stone Zone. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Well, President Donald Trump's preliminary peace agreement with Iran is drawing very strong support from American voters. According to a new Qantas survey, Trump signed the Memorandum of Understanding after the G7 meeting in Yvon-les-Bains, France, at the Palace of Versailles, while the Iranian president, Masoud Pezeshkian, signed remotely. The agreement puts a 60-day ceasefire and negotiation framework into effect, with both sides expected to work quickly towards a final deal. Under a preliminary agreement, the United States will lift the naval blockade of Iran, work with regional partners on reconstruction and economic development, and begin the process of ending sanctions. Iran, in return, has agreed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz and reaffirm that it will not obtain or develop nuclear weapons. Already, ship tracking data shows that vessels moving through the Straits of Hormuz and American gas prices have fallen below $4 for the first time in months. And the public approves of this progress. Qantas found that 43% of Americans strongly approve of the peace agreement, while another 13% somewhat approve, while only 13% expressed disapproval. Trump celebrated the deal on Truth Social, declaring that oil is flowing again. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon. Markets are rising, job creation is strong, and prices are swiftly dropping. This is President Trump's patient approach, and it's paying off. President Trump used military pressure, economic leverage, and diplomatic speed to force Tehran to the table and reopen a vital energy corridor. This success shows that American leadership can stop wars, lower prices, and defend national security without surrendering strength. Now, I say we must stay vigilant to make sure that other foreign interests don't sabotage this peace deal for their own aims. Meanwhile, the Obama Presidential Center officially opened in Chicago, and the message from Michelle Obama shows how self-absorbed this broad-shouldered diva truly is. Asked by Good Morning America's Robin Roberts to describe the next chapter of their lives in one word, former President Barack Obama answered, fun. But Michelle Obama answered, me. Does that mean she's going to be a candidate for president? I've long thought that was a possibility. I thought she would be in the past. In fact, I thought she would have been the candidate after they dumped Joe Biden. But I think she wasn't quite ready yet. I wouldn't rule it out. The comment came as the long-delayed Obama Presidential Center opened its doors after years of planning, lawsuits, construction delays, and cost overruns. First announced as early as 2015 as a major investment in Chicago's South Side, the nearly 20-acre campus includes a museum, public spaces, athletic facilities, gardens, and exhibits devoted to defying the globalist false idol. The design kind of resembles the Death Star. It was meant to offend the senses in a gross example of cultural Marxism. I think it succeeded. The center faced major legal challenges over its location in historic Jackson Park, with opponents questioning the impact on public land. Some of those claims were later dismissed in federal court. As the opening ceremony, speakers included a land acknowledgement recognizing indigenous nations tied to the area in a nauseating display of virtue signaling. Elite progressives showed up to the opening of the center to celebrate themselves, paying lip service to social justice drivel, while Chicagoans still face crime, failing schools, high costs, and broken city services in their city that is being run off the rails by Democrats. But Michelle Obama doesn't care about the plight of the average person in Chicago. She's focused solely on self-aggrandizement and satiating her swollen ego. Perhaps Josh Hockett was onto something. We also have the story, which we've covered here extensively on the Stone Zone, about the fact that many black contractors, those involved in the construction of the Obama Center, have been stiffed. This is extraordinary because originally, you recall, we were told that this was going to empower the black community, but black contractors aren't having their bills paid, and many at this point are settling for pennies on the dollar if they can get paid at all. Many of them struggle to stay alive. It's really quite extraordinary, the hypocrisy that abounds regarding the entire Obama Center. Plus, if you've seen it, the thing's hideous. It's hard to understand. Meanwhile, the Republican National Committee and the Georgia Republican Party are taking Fulton County, Georgia, and Gwinnett County, Georgia to court, accusing local election officials of ignoring state law and weakening absentee ballot safeguards. The lawsuits, filed Thursday, allege that officials in the two Democrat-heavy counties created unauthorized absentee ballot drop-off locations and allowed voters to hand ballots directly to election workers for later transfer. Republicans say that those procedures go way beyond what Georgia law permits under SB 202, the Election Integrity Act, signed by Governor Brian Kemp back in 2021. The Republican National Chairman, Joe Gruters, good friend of mine, said that Georgia election law is written by elected legislators and not by unelected county bureaucrats, and those bureaucrats are compelled to follow the law or they should face consequences. Gruters is absolutely right. He warned that local boards cannot rewrite the rules by inventing new ballot collection systems or weakening the very security protections put into place by the state legislature. This lawsuit claims that Folsom and Gwinnett County tried to classify additional collection points as quote-unquote ballot bags, creating an unauthorized workaround opening the door to potential vote rigging. The Republican National Committee says that the policies restrict poll watcher access, they allow ballots to be collected outside of authorized times, and they permit workers to accept absentee ballots in ways that the state law simply does not allow. It sounds like the fraud blueprint that was used to fix the 2020 presidential election, in my opinion. The Republican National Committee's move to sue Georgia's counties show that they understand the paramount importance of election integrity. If we don't have honest and fair elections, what do we have? Ballots must be tracked, secured, and handled according to the same rules everywhere, not just adjusted county by county where officials dislike the law. Republicans are demanding that the court stop these practices and force compliance with Georgia election law. Every legal vote must count, and every ballot must also be protected. Confidence in elections depends on clear rules, equal enforcement, and accountability. Those not following the law must not only be sued, they must be thrown behind bars as a way to create a deterrent against that exact sort of behavior. I have grave concerns about the integrity of the elections. One of the great tragedies is that Tulsi Gabbard essentially left the office of the Director of National Intelligence before completing her investigation of the 2020 elections, both the electronic voting machines and whether they are secure or they have any integrity, as well as the paper ballots that seem to pop up at 3 o'clock in the morning in 3 different states all at the same time after the Republican observers had been forced from the scene. So it is a huge concern. I'm not yet convinced about 2020, nor am I convinced that we'll have a fair election in 2026. Meanwhile, Washington, D.C. has chosen a Democratic socialist as its next likely mayor, and this result shows how extremely leftism is gaining traction in cities nationwide. Janice Lewis George defeated a more moderate Democrat by running hard on anti-Trump resistance and promises of sweeping government actions to solve problems for city residents. Those poor schmucks will now be led on a primrose path towards destruction. Georgia's victory follows similar left-wing wins in New York City, as we know, as well as Seattle, showing how younger urban voters and public sector unions are pushing America's major cities further to the left. Lewis George built a powerful coalition of labor unions, local socialists, and progressive activists. Her campaign focused less on public safety and more on rent, child care, and cost of living anger. Candidate George's left-wing demagoguery connected with the public in a city frustrated after 3 terms of low IQ Muriel Bowser that has been rattled by federal workforce cuts and other problems. But campaign slogans are about to meet reality, you see. Washington faces a major budget gap, unemployment above 6%, slowing population growth, empty federal offices, and a downtown economy that needs private investment, not socialist meddling. Already, the new mayor, Lewis George, appears to be moderating some promises, including questions about a wealth tax and whether universal child care can happen immediately in D.C. D.C. voters may want affordability, but higher taxes, bigger bureaucracy, and anti-business policies make everything worse and only exacerbates the existing problems. By moving in the National Guard, Donald Trump brought crime down sharply. Even Democrat Mayor Muriel Bowser was forced to admit it. Most folks of common sense need to understand that when leaders fail to control costs, crime, and schools, voters can succumb to radical promises. It's kind of like the hope and change thing. The only path forward is by embracing populism. Stale, weak republicanism is hated by the masses and will get steamrolled by better organized leftists. Only through MAGA and an outsider populist agenda can we reverse our national downslide. So I say they double down on what President Trump has created, and we should crush these Marxists for good in the upcoming elections. Meanwhile, the United States Senate has passed a rare, unanimous message that Xi Jinping and the Chinese Communist Party must be held accountable. On June 16th, the U.S. Senate approved a resolution condemning Xi for deceit, undermining peace and security, and orchestrating crimes against humanity. The measure also urges the U.S. government to use every available tool, including global Magnitsky sanctions against Chinese Communist Party officials responsible for these human rights abuses and corruption. My own Florida Senator Rick Scott introduced a resolution called Xi and the Chinese Communist Party, the greatest threat to America's way of life, prosperity, and global peace. He accused the regime of lying, cheating, stealing, exploiting slave labor, committing genocide, and abusing its own people. The resolution cites Beijing's role in covering up the early COVID-19 outbreak in Wuhan, misleading the world about the virus, and using international bodies to spread falsehoods. It also points to China's role in the fentanyl crisis, which is continuing, despite Xi's repeated promises to help stop the flow of the precursor chemicals used to make fentanyl. Senators further accused the regime of trade cheating, intellectual property theft, cyber attacks, espionage, and operating secret police activity on American soil. The resolution, again supported by all 100 senators, also highlights decades of brutality, from Tiananmen Square's massacre to the persecution of Falun Gong practitioners, forced organ harvesting allegations, and ongoing repression of dissidents. It's worth noting that the Chinese people are not America's enemy. The communist regime that rules them, however, is, and it is a greater threat that must be confronted. America must stand for what is right, punish authoritarian abuses, and never operate under the guise that Xi is just a normal partner or some kind of small d Democrat. China can never be the preeminent world power they wish to be. That would be a death sentence for global freedom. But it is China. It is the greatest threat to American democracy. It is China that is the greatest threat to our freedoms. It is China that is buying up the ranch land, the farmland. So much of our American real estate is China that is the greatest danger to this country. And those who blame Richard Nixon because he's the one who opened the door to China and normalized our relations with them don't really understand history. You see, when Nixon opened the door to China, it was a dirt poor, backwards, agrarian society. It wasn't until Bill Clinton gave China most favored nation trading status that they became the economic and then therefore the military powerhouse and danger that they are now. I'm Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone, and we'll be right back with more political news on the other side.
A burst pipe, a dead water heater, the AC calling it quits. Who do you call? HomeServe is an easy way to handle unexpected home repairs, with plans covering stuff basic homeowners insurance usually won't. Instead of scrambling for a contractor, you make one call to get the repair process started. Join the millions of customers who trust HomeServe right now. Go to homeserve.com/podcast for 50% less your first year. That's homeserve.com/podcast. Savings compared to renewal price. Void in Florida.
The Stone Zone. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Trump Justice Department is stepping in after Major League Baseball warned 3 San Francisco Giants players who quietly expressed their Christian faith during the LGBT Pride Night. Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights Harmeet Dillon sent a letter to the Major League Baseball Commissioner Rob Manfred saying that the matter is being referred to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission for further investigation. The controversy in question began when Giant pitchers Landon Roop, J.T. Brubaker, and Ryan Walker wrote Genesis 9:12-16 on their caps near the Rainbow Pride logo. The Bible passage refers to God's covenant after the flood and the rainbow as its sign. Major League Baseball responded by warning the players that writing on uniforms violates league rules and should not happen again. But the Justice Department says the issue may involve religious discrimination. The Deputy Attorney General, Harmeet Dillon, noted that Title VII requires employers to reasonably accommodate the religious beliefs of their employees. She also pointed to an apparent double standard. You see, the Major League Baseball has allowed players to wear political messages such as Black Lives Matter patches, while warning players who added scripture to pride-themed hats. That seems to me to be an inconsistency. That contrast raises an obvious question. So why is leftist pro-degeneracy political messaging celebrated while Christian expression is treated as a problem? The EEOC has not confirmed any investigation so far, citing confidentiality rules, but its chair said that the agency remains committed to protecting religious liberty for all workers. Professional athletes should not be forced to become walking billboards for beliefs that violate their Christian values. All pro sporting leagues, with the notable exception of the UFC, have fallen into the woke trap, even though most of their fans are actually repulsed by it. Major League Baseball may have gone too far this time with their blatant disrespect of Christian athletes. We'll be watching this case very, very closely. Meanwhile, a far-left Boston College history professor is under fire after comparing the UFC event at the White House to racist violence of the 19th century lynch mobs. During an interview with former CNN reporter Jim Acosta, one of my favorites, Professor Heather Richardson argued that the impulse behind holding the UFC fight on the White House lawn was connected to the same impulse that drove slavery, lynching, and discrimination against Black Americans, Italian Americans, Mexican Americans, and Native Americans. She went further, suggesting that the event reflected a belief that America is a white nation and that anyone who challenged that view must be removed from political life. I watched the UFC fight. I didn't see that reflected at all. This is yet another example of elite academia projecting their own racial grievances onto everything they see. The UFC is one of the most diverse sports in the world, featuring fighters and fans from every race, nationality, and background. It is a showcase for all of the best fighters the world has to offer. Richardson didn't even understand the basic fact before spouting off ignorantly. That's because she obviously didn't watch any of the fights. Holding a major athletic event at the White House may be unconventional, but comparing it to lynching trivializes one of the darkest chapters in American history. Other critics, including musician Sheryl Crow, also denounced the event, calling it indecent and accusing the Trump administration of distractions and corruption. But there was no such criticism when Biden at Easter celebrated transgenderism on the White House lawn. That was perfectly all right. Millions of Americans saw something very different at the White House lawn. A president celebrating free expression, athleticism, competition, and honoring America with the inspiring visual display of these fights. The aesthetics of the event were breathtaking, and the left is triggered by the event because any celebration of American tradition to them is pure heresy. We should never apologize for any of this. Let the left be triggered if they want. It only adds to the fun of celebrating America. No place will be greater than on our 250th birthday coming up this July 4th. We'll have a special show for you right here in the Stone Zone. Meantime, thank you for joining us today. Until we meet again, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Hey there, it's Wayfair here, where delivery and setup are as easy as a few taps on your phone. You're relaxing in an old hammock, scrolling Wayfair's app, when you spot it, a brand new patio set. Next thing you know, Wayfair delivers it right to your patio and sets it up. Oh, you need a new grill too? All right, Wayfair's got you covered. With Wayfair's room of choice delivery and fast expert setup on qualifying orders, life gets a little easier. Visit wayfair.com or the Wayfair app.
Wayfair, every style, every home.